This. What if the greatest discoveries in history weren't just lost? What if they were lost on purpose?
All right, so our investigation starts in a place you probably wouldn't expect. Theology. Yeah, really. One of our sources dives deep into a critical analysis of Marian apparitions. You know, those visions of the Virgin Mary that people report seeing all over the world. And this source, wow, it does not pull any punches. It basically argues that we have to be super critical of these kinds of visions. Think about it. If some kind of evil force wanted to trick you, would it show up looking like a monster? No way. It would show up as something beautiful, something majestic, something you'd be inclined to believe is holy.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The source lays out this fascinating comparison. On one hand, you've got the Mary from Scripture, who's described as humble, always pointing people towards her son, never to herself. But then you look at the Mary from these apparitions, and the source claims they're totally different, self-important, demanding worship, sometimes even making threats. It's like a completely different personality.
So here's the core argument, the big what if. What if these aren't heavenly visions at all? The source suggests there's something else entirely, astral phenomena. Basically, deceptions being broadcast from another dimension, some invisible soul world designed to lead people astray. A hidden force pretending to be divine.
Okay, so that's the spiritual side. But what if this force wasn't just spiritual? Let's switch gears, because our next set of sources brings this idea crashing down into the physical world. We're talking about forgotten geniuses, inventors who claimed they could literally plug into a mysterious energy that flows right through the Earth itself. Take this guy, for example, Antonio Meucci. Now, you might not know his name, but way back in the 1800s, long before Alexander Graham Bell, Meucci stumbled onto something incredible. He found a way to send sound, not through the air to your ear, but directly through your body's nervous system. Just imagine that. But, as the story often goes, it was a technology he could never quite get off the ground.
He actually had a name for it, physiophony. I mean, can you imagine hearing a voice inside your own head that isn't coming through your ears? It's being sent through your body's own wiring. Our sources say this was the first step towards something they call telepathic transmission, which is, well, basically technological telepathy.
And of course, you can't talk about this stuff without bringing up the man himself, Nikola Tesla. His patents, like the one we're looking at, are filled with these ideas. He talks about using energy transmitted through the natural media, the earth, the water, the air. He wasn't just thinking about better light bulbs. He was envisioning a world powered not by a grid of wires, but by the planet itself.
But here's the thing. Tesla wasn't some lone wolf on this. A clear pattern starts to emerge when you dig into this. You find inventor after inventor, like this guy, A.F. Collins, filing patents for systems that use the Earth itself as a massive conductor. They weren't just broadcasting over the planet. They were trying to send signals through it.
And check this out. A guy named James Rogers developed these underground and underwater antenna systems that were so good at getting rid of static, the U.S. Navy actually adopted them. The sources claimed that during World War I, they could pick up messages from Europe with zero interference, not a single word lost. That's pretty amazing.
So what's the common thread here, the big takeaway? You have all these brilliant people, most of them working completely independently, and they all arrive at the same mind-blowing conclusion, that they've tapped into some kind of fundamental energy that flows through the Earth. A power source and a communications network just sitting there, waiting for us to use it.
Okay, so we've covered the spiritual and the technological. Now let's connect those two with biology. Because our sources suggest this exact same hidden force doesn't just flow through the planet, it flows through the very cells in our own bodies.
Let's go back to the 19th century again. There was this incredibly meticulous scientist, Baron von Reichenbach, and he documented something he called the odd force. After thousands, and I mean thousands of experiments with people he called sensitives, he was convinced there was this subtle energy. It wasn't electricity, it wasn't magnetism, it was something else. Something that came from crystals, magnets, and especially from living things.
Okay, now let's jump forward to the 1930s. There's another researcher, Dr. Royal Rife, who builds this revolutionary microscope. And with it, he claims he can see living viruses in their natural states, something nobody else could do. But then he goes even further. He says he isolated this one specific violet-red microbe. He called it the BX virus, and he claimed to find it in every single sample of cancer tissue he looked at.
And that discovery, according to our source, led to his most incredible claim of all. Rife said he figured out how to destroy these pathogens, not with chemicals or drugs, but with frequency.
The idea was that every microbe has its own unique resonant frequency, kind of like a singer hitting the right note to shatter a wine glass. He claimed he could broadcast that exact frequency and just shatter the virus, while leaving all the healthy cells around it totally untouched.
Okay, let's take a breath. We've got deceptive spirits, we've got energy flowing through the earth, and now we have the frequency of life itself. So, are these all just separate, weird stories? Unrelated anomalies from the fringes of science and theology? Or is there a single thread that connects all of them?
Well, the sources we've looked at argue no. They say these are not separate things. They're all just different faces of one single underlying energy. It's a power that sensitives can perceive, that inventors can harness with technology, and that can be manipulated with frequency. And this is the force that they often call Vril.
And when you lay it all out like this, the pattern becomes pretty clear, right? You have a force that seems to operate on the level of consciousness, technology, and biology. But maybe the most compelling and chilling part of the pattern is what the sources claim happened to the people who got too close to figuring it all out. They were consistently suppressed, dismissed, or just forgotten.
So what you should really take away from this is that recurring pattern, a powerful, misunderstood energy that keeps popping up throughout history in all these different fields, only to get pushed back into the shadows every time. The question these texts really force us to ask is, are we just looking at a bunch of weird coincidences, or are these clues pointing towards a single, unified, and lost science?
So, we've laid out the connections just as they're presented in our source material, and it really all boils down to one final huge question for you to think about. Are we looking at the faint whispers of a forgotten science, something that could literally change the world as we know it, or are we just looking at the tangled threads of a very grand and maybe even a very dangerous illusion?